Welcome. Why don't we get started? Good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Shanker, City Manager. I want to welcome you to the annual Town Budget Meeting. And if it's time for the Town Budget Meeting, it also signifies that we as staff are beginning preparation for next fiscal year's budget. Now, next fiscal year, remember, believe it or not, is fiscal year 23-24, and it takes effect July 1st. And we're already started working on our capital improvement plan and also the budget that will be taken to the City Council for approval later in February, early in February. We'll go over the schedule for you, so you'll be able to have plenty of time for input into our process. Now, one of the things the city manager and the staff has to do for the City Council is prepare that annual budget. The program budget has all the services we provide, and also a capital improvements plan, which is a 5-year plan on all the major projects that we'll be working on, like your favorite street construction, you know, all those you always like to see us show up on, water improvements, sewer improvements, electric improvements, all those projects. So we're working on some of the big projects through a 5-year plan and also our annual program budget. I want to also show you the schedule, before we get into this, of important dates. So you don't have it. We'll look up here. All right. So each year we perform an annual citizen satisfaction survey. As you hopefully you've participated in it, it's a statistically valid survey. So not everybody responds. It's sent out randomly. The results of that, we believe, represent the feelings of the community because of the response we get. Now, we ask a lot of questions about capital improvement projects, service levels, things you like to see more of, you like to pay more for, things you like to reduce, maybe. Maybe we're doing things you don't want to pay for. So that information is given to the City Council. That's important in deciding what our next budget will be like. All of you, maybe throughout the year, also give input to the City Council. So they factor that in before they make their decision. And thirdly, we try to have an opportunity like tonight to have a town budget meeting for people to come forward and give your information to city staff. Now, I can't guarantee that everything you give me, and I'll write this down, make sure it's transmitted to the council, all the things you want us to add or maybe things you want us to eliminate, I can't promise you will be in the next year's budget. But I can promise you the City Council will take it to heart. They will review all your comments. So everybody here is tonight. I hope you're going to give us some input. We'll take down your comments. We'll make sure the City Council gets it. People who aren't here tonight, aren't present in the City Council chambers, there is an opportunity for you to call in only on tonight, live, on November 1st. Remember, only November 1st, live. You can call in with your suggestions. We're going to be looking for suggestions for the capital improvements plan or the operating budget, okay? We're also streaming on Facebook and YouTube, so you can also type in your suggestions there. We'll make sure it's recorded and introduced into the record, all right? I want to start off by giving you a little bit of background on the budget itself. We're not only trying to help you, but maybe the viewers watching at home, a little bit about the background. Before I do that, I want to tell you who's here tonight. We have Mayor Hala here. Mayor is going to help us. When we open up the mic, he'll be carrying the mic around to you. Councilperson Tim Garton's here. You know, Tim. Susan Guiazza, who's our public information officer. Nancy Masteller, who's our budget coordinator. Brian Phillips, who's the assistant city manager, but he's also currently acting as our interim finance director. So our new finance director arrives on November 14th. So they'll go over a little bit of information about the budget for all of you. And then most importantly, we're here to listen to you, to record your ideas for the coming budget. Okay? Why don't we start off? Nancy, you want to start off?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. We'd just like to give you a little bit of a brief, kind of a high-level overview of city finances. And this is very casual, so if you have questions as we go along, just please interrupt. Brian's going to chime in. If he's got comments, Steve will chime in. For years, this was the Dwayne Pitcher, our former finance director presentations, and I've heard it many times, so we'll see how good I listened as he was giving it. So the first slide shows the property tax rate, and this is actually the one for if you're an Ames resident in an Ames school district. And as most people realize, the city's only a portion of that. It's about a third. And the rest of your tax rate is made up by the school district, which is the largest percentage, and then the county. And then there's this little tiny slice that goes to DMAC. We're very fortunate names that we've pretty much had continuous taxable valuation percentage growth over the years. There's two things that affect your property taxes. One is the property tax rate, which we establish for our portion of it through the budget. The other part is what the valuation is on your property. There's years where, as Steve will say, just because your valuation is increased, your assessed valuation does not necessarily mean your taxes will go up, because a lot of times if that happens for us, we can hold the rates a little bit lower, or we've even in the last few years even been able to reduce them slightly. We passed, Steve might remember when, the local option sales tax for the community. 60% of it goes to property tax relief, and the other 40% is used for community betterment projects. So that 60% that goes to the general fund to reduce your property taxes is illustrated in the slide just to show the property tax rate for 22-23, which we would have established with last year's budget, is $9.83. If we had not had the Thank you, Susan. If we had not had the local option sales tax in place, it would have been $11.56. So that property tax relief that we get through local option sales tax is very important. As many people know, it was kind of flattening out for a few years in there, but then they passed the law that you're taxed on internet sales now, which is, if you shop on Amazon like I do, sometimes you notice that sales tax, and that really has been beneficial to bringing in local option sales tax for our community. Yep, go ahead. So some things that some people might not realize is where the money comes from. People think of taxes and thinks that maybe that's the largest revenue source for the city. But as you can see from this, actually the largest revenue source is charges for services. And that's true for probably a lot of communities, but especially larger ones like ours, where we have our own utilities. So probably the largest single revenue source is electric utility rates and payments, also for water, sewer. Charges for services also includes smaller things like park and rec fees, some charges just that are general governmental if you pay for a planning fee or something like that. So that's by far the largest revenue source we have. As you can see on here, property taxes is only a little bit over 14%. Anybody have any questions about any of that? I believe the next slide is just the same kind of numbers, but you can see it in numerical form just to see what a large amount of money that adds up to be. It's, over $260 million budgeted for 22-23. And then where do we spend the money? Well, as you can imagine, since a lot of the charges for services are for the utilities, that money is restricted to be used for the utilities. We operate the utilities like they're a separate business. So of course, our largest expense area is also for utilities. The capital improvements, the CIP at the bottom, 29.3% is probably our second largest area, but that does also include the utility capital projects, which are also quite a large portion of that, although it also includes all of the street projects, which are also a large portion of that CIP budget. And then again, we just show the same thing in numerical form. So you can see that for 22-23, what we adopted is a little over $280 million in expenditures. So the property tax rate, this was the property tax rate that was based on last year's budget. Your property tax rate is actually made up of 4 levies. The first is the general levy. That's the levy that funds police service, fire service, the library, parks and recreation. Almost anything funded through the general fund is paid for out of that levy. As you can see, ours was $5.51, a little bit over for 22-23. By state law, we can't exceed $8.10. And so the fact that ours is lower gives us a lot of flexibility to be able to fund other things. You'll see in a slide a little bit farther on that that's very unusual. We're one of the few communities of our size that has a tax rate that's that low for the general levy. Then we also have a trust and agency levy, which is allowed to collect funding for any employee benefits. We only use it for the police and fire retirement benefit. The transit levy is used to fund the city's portion of SIRIDE. And then we also have a debt service levy, which is used to pay back the bonds for the principal and the interest on the bond payments for the capital improvement projects, such as street projects. And then how do we calculate your property tax? This is a slide that we show every year when we're doing the budget presentation in January. So we like to show, like, if you have a $100,000 home, which we know in Ames hardly anyone has, if anyone, there's a couple of different factors that come into account when you do it. First is the rollback. By state law, we can only tax. There's a taxable value as opposed to an assessed value, and it changes every year. So for 22-23, it was 54.1302%, so which reduces your taxable value to only $54,130. If you take that times the tax rate, your tax on $100,000 is $532. And what do you get for $532? So this kind of breaks out what that goes for in the budget for what you're paying for. And as you can see, the top one, this for streets and traffic, is the largest number, but that's really just to pay the debt service for the street projects. Almost anything that's operational, like snow and ice removal or street cleaning, is paid for out of road use tax funds. So that $145 is pretty much just capital projects. The other single largest one then is police and fire protection. Then it kind of goes down from there for library, parks and recreation, the city's share of the transit program, general support services, resource recovery, and then some other smaller ones as you go down the line.
Excuse me, this is an important document because I think it puts in perspective what you pay. And remember, if you have a $200,000 house, multiply that by 2, 300 by 3. But it seems if you look at it, it's pretty reasonable. So for police, let's say police, you have a $200,000 house, you just double that. That's what you get in the way of police coverage that you're paying for your property taxes. The fire department looks kind of low, doesn't it? Well, I want to emphasize the partnership with what we have with Iowa State University. They actually help pay a quarter, 25% of our budget for the fire department because we provide fire protection and emergency assistance responses to the university. Without them, that number would have been higher. You would have been paying more taxes. So we have a lot of partnerships like that that help reduce the cost of the property tax. Anybody have questions on that? Yes, sir.
Nancy, one thing you might clarify. You indicated our total revenues are $268 million, but our total expenditure would be $280 million.
Yep.
There might be people saying,
Sure.
where's the difference?
Okay, so that was citywide. As a lot of people know who are familiar with the budget for the general fund, which is what we talk about a lot here when we talk about the property tax rate, we balance it every year. So the revenues and expenses of the general fund will equal every year. But when you're looking at the total across the city, it includes the utilities such as electric, sewer, water. So there's many years we might collect more, and then we're going to pay more for capital improvement projects. So we bank money so that we can pay cash for those projects up front. So they don't always, some years the revenues overall will be less and some years they'll be more. Yeah. Is that Steve? I wasn't sure at first if it was Steve or this microphone. Okay, I'll say it again. Yep. So revenues, expenses in the general fund will equal each other every year in a budget year. We always produce a balanced budget. But citywide, they might not, because citywide includes, we have multiple what we call enterprise funds, which are like the utilities that we operate them as a business. And in those utilities, sometimes their revenues are exceeding their expenses, and we hold that money and we save it so we can pay cash for capital projects instead of having to issue debt. So there'll be years where the expenses might exceed the revenues and some years where they're actually more. Yes. Oh, no. Yeah. This would include their total operating budget. And then also if we're paying a little bit of debt service for them. So the streets and traffic number here is almost like exclusively debt service. Police and fire would include their salaries, everything to do with their their operations.
Debt service on the fire apparatus.
Yep. The library would include all of their operations, plus we're still paying some debt service for the latest construction project.
Wait a minute, wait, can we hear, we need a microphone. John, right here.
Mhm.
So on an earlier slide, I saw there was $22 million for transportation, but then on another slide, I saw it was $2 million for SciRide. What's the difference?
Transportation also includes SciRide, it includes the airport, and then it includes all of the street projects, so snow removal, street maintenance, everything related to the streets, shared use paths, the maintenance for those, the right of way, also parking.
By the way, if you focus on SciRide, it's a good question, like $2 million. So doesn't it cost more than that? It does. That $2 million represents the property taxpayers' contribution to SciRide. The biggest contributor is actually Iowa State students. If you had someone who attended Iowa State University, or you have, you'll notice on their student fee, they pay for SciRide. So it's kind of a misnomer. People always say to me, well, students get to ride free. That's not the case. It shows up in the student fee, and they actually pay a larger contribution to us. And then below us, but significant amount of contribution comes from Iowa State administration. So it's those three entities that help subsidize the public transit system, which hopefully you know by now it needs that. Very little fare box revenue. There's probably maybe $150,000 to $200,000 fare box revenue, and a lot of the other money comes from federal and state grants, either to subsidize the operations of SciRide or help pay for the capital of some of our new buses. Good questions.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's important to point out, we operate based on a program budget. So we use 6 major program areas: public safety, utilities, transportation, culture and recreation, community development, and general government. And those different programs are broken down into a variety of different sub-programs and activities that are related to those things. So in the transportation program, for example, we have our activities related to the transit operations, related to traffic and roadway operations, bike paths, and things of that nature.
Bike paths.
And then in each of the other programs, you'll find similar groupings. So when you see transportation, that's referring to the transportation program that we have within the budget.
Good questions.
And then this is the slide I said was coming up a little bit earlier that just shows the property tax levy comparisons between Ames and some of the other larger communities. And as you can see, last year we were the bottom, so this year we're only one up. Dubuque made it below us. So, but the column I really want to draw your attention to is that general levy per 1,000, and you can see that we're at 551. Ankeny's at 615, and every other community is doing the full $8.10, which is the maximum amount you can have. So this gives us a lot of financial flexibility, and I think is really speaks well of the city management and the city council that we've been able to do this. It's been that way. I've been here 31 years, and we've always been either at the bottom or next to the bottom. So anybody have any questions?
Is that it?
That is it.
So let me ask you something. Let's see if you listen. I can give you $1 billion. No, I can't give you $1 billion for this, can I? Yeah, that would powerful. We're trying at home. We're trying somewhere. You read your property tax bills. You look at that bill at all. Okay, what percentage of that total bill is for our local government services that we provide? Remember what percentage? Nancy told you. How much? It's about 33%, about a third of that. So remember, about a third of that, the rest goes to school district, whether you're in Ames School District or you're in the Gilbert School District, and they have different rates too. So you can have an assessed value of $200,000 home. You can live south of Bloomington Road, and you might pay less than if you're in the Gilbert School District north of Bloomington Road, right? Because they have different school levies, if you will. But school district makes up probably your largest portion of property tax, about 45%. City is about 33, 32%. And then the county, you pay for a portion of the county operations. That's in the neighborhood of 20, 21, 22%. You pay a little bit for your, from our Des Moines area community college goes in there. Excuse me. And you also pay for Story County Hospital and some other items that are in there. So that's part of your property taxes, okay? Let's go back to the schedule. Could you just one more time, Brian? So the important dates. So September, we actually started preparing, as staff, is preparing the operating budget requests and also the CIP requests during that month, okay? They're working on that. We
Hey,
have the-
Steve, explain what CIP
Oh,
means and what's included in those.
Okay, so capital improvements plan, remember, that 5-year, it's a financial plan. So when we talk about we're going to extend Grand Avenue down to South 16th Street, we plan in advance for it. But not only we plan and say this is the project we need, we have to make sure we can finance it. So we do long-range financial estimating too, because we have to borrow bond money sometimes. We get state grants sometimes. We use road use tax sometimes that comes from the state to us based on usage of your gasoline usage, and taxes referred to us. So we have a long-range financial plan for all these projects. It's a plan, financial plan, capital improvements plan, and then the operating budget. The operating budget is for the 1 year, where we're going into next. And that's, again, the programs that we provide, all those services we provide to the citizens. It's a big budget. So we have the department heads are working with their staffs, putting together requests. Okay, and they'll start working on that. We'll move into December. Excuse me, we have November and December then. I have a probe team, a team that's made up of our budget coordinator, the budget analyst, the 2 assistant city managers, and they actually come in and they review the first level of review for the department's request. And they review every line item, we call it, every request for money they review at that detailed level. I want to make sure the council knows someone's looking at all those things. Yes, all the pencils they buy, all the paper they buy, someone's looking at that and questioning them. Okay, so we have those probe meetings, the first kind of slice of the budget in November and December. In December, we'll go before the council, and they're going to get some input from the town budget meeting that we talked about. They've had feedback through the year, and they've also had that citizen satisfaction survey results. And they're going to talk about some big things they might like to see in the budget. See, I don't like to wait until I come up with my budget in February and find out I was off base here, that we've got a balanced budget that we've worked on for 4 months and find out, oh, the council wants another item that's $3 million. We have to scramble to cut it out. So we want to get a little bit of direction on priorities up front before we finalize our recommendations. But that'll come in December. And then I move into January is a busy month for us because I actually then, they've had the first review through department heads through the probe team. Then I come in and I look at the budgets too, not from the line item, but the kind of the higher level. What type of services and level of service are they going to provide to the citizens? What's the cost? So it's still at the 10,000 foot level that I look at. And that's for the capital improvements plan and also the operating budget. I look at what the cost is going to be in terms of utility increases on the citizens or the ratepayers, and also property taxes. See if we have to make some adjustments there. Okay, if they've captured all the priorities that the city council wants to initiate, or maybe as a priority for myself. So we do that in the month of January. Now, an important date for you will be January 17th. Mark your calendars for January 17th, 2023, because the first document outside that comes outside of the public and the council will be a capital improvements plan recommendation from the city manager and the staff. That 5-year plan, the big projects you like to see, right? And the first thing we're going to do on January 17th, we're going to have a workshop. We're going to present our recommendations to the council and the public. But we don't ask anybody to make any final decisions yet because it's a big document. But we'll go over, the department heads will go over all those projects. That's introduced publicly. The final decision you'll see won't be made until February. So there's plenty of time to review the document and give input to the city council. You may like a project. You may not like a project. You may decide that a project has been left out of our recommendation. So after that, we'll offer public input the next week. You can also offer input to the council, your thoughts on that, react to the document. Okay? Again, no final decisions we made till early February, but it gives the public an opportunity to speak to our recommendation. So 17th and 24th of January, very important dates for you, right? And then here's some other important dates. We will present in February, starting it's probably a Friday, February 3rd is a Friday. And then the following week, there'll be 3 nights where we will present first on that Friday, the overview of the total budget. It's kind of the high level totals. Then we're going to get into each program. Department heads are here to explain each one of their programs, every service that we provide on those February 7th, 8th, and 9th. Those are all open to the public. They'll be televised. You'll be able to listen to them because you'll still have an opportunity to give input before they make their final decisions. The real final decisions are made at that next Tuesday on February 14th. They try to wrap it up. Okay? At that time, they're going to get final decisions given to us because we have to bundle that up for state law, and we have to have one final hearing on March 14th that certifies the budget. So we have to bring the budget to the public that the council wants to certify to you on March 14th. So we hope that any changes that have to be made, all the input you want to give to the council, their final decisions, if they weigh all these items, we'd like to see them made on by February 14th. Okay, all these meetings are open to the public. All that time still gives you an opportunity to give input to the council. All right, everybody understand those, all those dates? Okay, we're going to open it up now. Remember, people on YouTube and Facebook, you can type in your suggestions and we'll have somebody record it. We'll make sure it gets to the council. All right, and people can call in too at 515. Let's see if they follow me here. We haven't practiced this. I could do this in 515-239-5214. 515-239-5214, only on November 1st, though. We won't answer after that, I promise you. Okay, who wants to go first? Everybody who's here, I want to give you an opportunity. I'm going to write this down. I have trouble writing because I'm a left-hander on this board, but I'll try to write it down. And we will make sure council gets all this information. And after everybody's gone one time, you might want to come around a second time. That's okay, but let's everybody have their first shot, if that's okay. All right? The mayor will hand the mic to you, and we can start off. Who wants to start off for the first input? I've got more or less.
Is this on? Yeah. Okay. I just, first of all, want to give the city and council and everyone a huge amount of credit because Ames is a place that people move back to. And I think they move back to it because of the quality of life in this city. So if we were to do more of anything, I think it's looking at more of those quality of life things that the city offers, whether it's soccer leagues or baseball or the arts or any of those things that do something for the quality of life. That's really what sets us apart from so many other communities. And it even gets down to things like the three of us have all been involved in Rummage Rampage. Not that that's a quality of life thing, although it might be considered that, but it's a community activity. It's a community sponsored thing. And I got to tell you, that's what makes Ames such a great place to live. And maybe not more of it, but we certainly don't want to pull back on it.
Appreciate it.
Can you just count every single city council meeting? Sure, like.
So my short
Are
answer
we
for
getting
your
names? Are we getting names?
As much as I can, if they can say their names. That would
Could
be-
you say your name? You might, so we make sure the council knows. Stan.
Everyone knows I'm Stan Raby.
I got
Do
you.
you want the address?
I got,
Okay.
write it down over there.
I did.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mansell.
That's fine.
My short answer for your notes is the Community Academy.
Pardon me, I'm
and
sorry.
The Community Academy.
Oh.
And I'm going to explain that for you. I would like to thank city leadership for your commitment to collecting feedback from community members for the budget. As an Ames resident, parent of Ames District students, and employee of the Community Academy, I feel strongly that multiple and varied opportunities should be made both available and accessible to youth in the city of Ames. We are very fortunate to be able to choose from sports, music, theater, chess club, Lego League, and so many activities locally that supplement our public, private, and homeschooling in town. In addition, the Community Academy provides programming that connects youth to their community through long-term projects in collaboration with peers, mentors, and local leaders so they can grow up happy and healthy as a part of a community that supports them through life's hard times. In order to provide year-round nature projects, behind-the-scenes tours of Ames businesses and organizations, standalone activities like Halloween candy science experiments, and other programs to all families, regardless of their income or socioeconomic status, the Community Academy fundraises to provide a generous sliding scale of registration fees at 5 different levels. With an investment from the city through asset funding, the Community Academy can expand our discounted offerings and help students grow up as engaged members of our community who are able to see and understand the challenges facing us and then feel equipped to help find solutions.
Thank you. Can I ask a question? You'll have to excuse my ignorance. So currently, are you funded through asset?
We just became an asset.
Okay.
We just became an asset
All right.
partner agency.
I just want to make sure you're specifically asking. You'll go through that process then, right?
Yep.
So there's no specific separate request necessarily.
I mean, if you want to give.
No,
us-
no. I knew I shouldn't say anything, should I? No, I just want to clarify. Yeah, thank you.
My name is Mike Todd. And I just want to say, I also want to commend the city on a few different things. So, on the website, you have some really great things that you've come up with in this Live, Grow, Belong City of Ames piece. Ames offers you a place to grow and a place you'll never outgrow, a place to build a successful career and lifelong friends, a place to raise strong kids, give them an amazing education and a childhood they won't forget, a place that one day, without you realizing it, becomes your hometown, a town where you feel like you belong, always. That's what's written here. And I think that is an amazing aspirational goal. Like, I think that's awesome. And I think we need to do more of that. Because I think a lot of people in social services, family services areas, I feel like have a window into things. And we do see that for many of our youth, but there are many of our youth that don't ever experience that. And that makes us sad, right? I'm taught here at Ames High School for 17 years. And I see the same kids that get left behind that never experience this vision. And so that's kind of where things like the Community Academy, and I'm sure lots of other things, good-hearted people who've lived in Ames for a long time that said we need to do more for some, and I think that's commendable. And I think what the city's done with the asset funding request, where this year they specifically said all of our priorities are under low and moderate income. I think that's the right direction, right? I think that was a great change for this year, and I think so. Just realizing that asset change to low and moderate income, I think is going to go a long way to achieving that aspirational goal. And I think that's exciting. So I think you need more people doing more different things to really meet the needs of kids. You can't expect to keep doing the same things we've always done. And, I think we'll get to those other people that we've left out for, ever, right? It's just not going to happen. We need to try different things, right? And I think do more of that, try more things. And I think
What do you teach?
I teach science, and I got to go back to parent teacher conferences.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Took my dinner break. Sorry, guys. I got.
Well, great. Thank you. Council appreciates that comment. We'll continue to do better for that. Thanks for what you do too for the youth. Thanks for what you do for the youth too. James. Anybody else?
Sherry Riley, and full disclosure, I live in Lafayette Township, but I work in Ames. And I think we need to spend more money on affordable housing of all sorts, but particularly low and very low income affordable housing for families, not just individuals, families.
Are you thinking, I'm just trying to clarify, can it be apartments, single family owner occupied? What do you think? Are all of the above?
I mean, it's got to be apartments. It's got to be attached kinds of living, because people can't afford to own homes if they're low or very low income. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. Unless they've inherited a property, it's unlikely that they would own. So,
Yep, I understand. that's a, quite frankly, I talked to colleagues all over the country and everybody's grappling with it. How do you do it? How do you make it a viable project? The council's certainly trying many ways. We have an affordable housing project going up, as you probably know, which will be apartment units. Plus, we're trying to get some detached owner occupied homes. It's a bad time now. You can imagine what costs are for homes, and we're trying to get them for the very low and moderate income people to be affordable. So we also, the council, as you know, Vanessa Baker Latimer, our housing coordinator, has purchases properties. We've been working with Habitat for Humanity. So you'll see a number of houses springing up. Probably some properties have been purchased. Sometimes you tear down the older properties or dangerous buildings sometimes. We've been very successful at that. I know Tim over here and a lot of the council members are pushing for rehabbing existing homes because those are probably our most, I think, our most valuable homes, right? The least costly is to rehab a home you have today versus try to build a new one. Just with the cost of new materials and labor, it's just not as cost effective than rehabbing existing homes. So I think you're going to see that's going to be a push by the city council too. But it's frustrating for all of us. I don't think we try, but no one has the silver bullet yet. But we'll keep trying because I think everybody wants to achieve that goal.
Hi, thank you for saying that. My name's Linda Munden, and everything Sherry said and everything you just said, many times over, especially for those who make less than 30% of the area median income. And I would definitely attend a zero-based budgeting clinic if you would love to put one on, Brian, in the new finance. That's fascinating to me. Not that you do exactly zero-based budgeting, but it sounded like it. Whenever I come, I like to talk about pedestrian safety, and we talk about bicycle safety and all safety. The little guy is afraid of the bigger guy. The pedestrians are afraid of the bicyclists. The bicyclists are afraid of the cars. The motorcyclists are afraid of the cars. And the cars are afraid of the trucks. And that's just the way it is because one goes faster than the other, and it's dangerous. And I appreciate what we're trying to do here in Ames. I really do. I've noticed, and I paid special attention here over the past year since the last time I was here talking, and that where I find myself the safest is actually at stop signs. People who are driving tend to pay more attention to the pedestrians at stop signs than they do at stop lights. And
That's
those and the
interesting, yeah.
yeah, it is. I noticed that. I've been paying special attention to that, and the turn arrows, and the little white guy that says I can walk. I have to be particularly careful with those because it seems like people driving cars don't see me, so I have to do those and constantly be looking around. So more of that, and I don't know. People don't tend to see those little yellow flashing lights like the ones you have in the park. So yeah. And another thing that I did notice, I'm in my 60s now, and I try to walk everywhere because I live by Bandshell. And I noticed that I walk a lot down Lincoln Way and a lot down Duff. And man, it gets really hot. And sometimes I feel like I'm going to pass out. And there's no shade, and there's no place I can sit down. And man, just a park bench or something, or just a little tree for some shade, just anything where if I want to walk all the way down to 5 Below or something like that, where I could just rest a minute, that would be awesome. So I think that's pedestrian safety. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Who else hasn't spoken? Excuse me.
Hi, Grant Olson. I'd like to continue the thought of the person who just spoke. The Climate Action Plan workshop is coming up on November 15th, and we're just starting out with the bike and pedestrian master plan process. And I predict that the consultant for the Climate Action Plan will say we need to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And so that's going to take quite a bit of investment with making walking more attractive, bicycling, transit as well. And so it's things like separated bike lanes, but you could also call them separated mobility lanes because people in their four-wheeled mobility scooters can use those as well. Some people, they like to occasionally bike, but they don't want to own a bike. And so bike share kiosks are going to be a very important part of that investment as well. Also, some money for quick build projects to make crosswalks safer. For example, if you've ever tried to cross Thackeray when using the bike and pedestrian trail, that crossing is a little wide. So just even a few $100s in investment in just shortening that crosswalk, things like that. As far as making transit more attractive, if you've ever stood here at City Hall Transfer Point and maybe had a pop-up thunderstorm and you forgot your umbrella at home, it would be nice to have some sort of shelter. And the idea rolling around in the back of my head is that it would be something a little bit bigger than what you might see at just a non-transfer point. And you could actually integrate solar into it, and the solar could then be a resiliency feature to power City Hall in the event of generator failure or power grid failure.
Okay, I understand.
And I will hand off the mic if anybody else. I do have a couple other things on my wish list, but if somebody else wants
We'll
to
come
talk.
back to you. Who hasn't spoken yet?
So one suggestion, thanks for those suggestions. So if people have suggestions that are difficult to reduce to a line item on this list, feel free to email the city council. I'm afraid we're going to lose some of these ideas. So feel the freedom to email the city council. If you go on the city council website, there's a link to email all of us at once. And so don't feel like you're limited to just adding a line on there. And I'm afraid some of these are complex enough that we're not going to capture them all. So feel free to do that.
Yep, we'll compile them all, make sure they get the booklet with all the thoughts in there. Who else? We had one submitted back.
Marlene Ayersman. I would like to see more money going toward the Ames Animal Shelter and Control. I think there's definitely a need for a new shelter for a whole lot of reasons. They do an awful lot for the community. I don't know if there's ever been any kind of study done about how many dogs and cats and other pets are owned here in the city of Ames. Has that ever been done?
How many are owned by them? How
How
many people own? No, we do not have that kind of data. We do not have that kind of data.
When I was growing up here in Ames, we had every animal had to be licensed, if I remember right. But I don't know how you'd do that. But
It's
anyway,
not required.
there's a lot, okay, and I think that the Ames Animal Shelter does an awful lot for us, and they reunite pets with their owners. They shelter those in need of help. They find new homes for unclaimed pets. They respond to a wide variety of wildlife calls, and I can come back to that in a minute. They educate citizens about being responsible pet owners. They provide medical care to some and also euthanize others that are deemed beyond hope. Without them, I just wonder what the city would do about all these animals in need. And it would put an immense strain on other municipal resources, I think. And there's a really good staff there right now. And I want to make sure that they're given their just dues. We adopted our dog just before the pandemic hit, a little puppy. And so that was a really great experience. Well, some of it not so great, but puppies, and I think that a couple of things that I've noticed when I've gone there, and I've been there a lot over the last several years. I also direct the Iowa Wildlife Center, and we do wildlife rehabilitation and conservation education. And the different city animal controls have become, throughout central Iowa, have become really good partners for us because we can't respond to a lot of wildlife calls all the time. And so Ames Animal Control has been an incredible partner in responding to a lot of wildlife calls. And one thing I've noticed when I've gone there, whether to pick up our new puppy or to deal with wildlife, is the abysmal, the lack of space. The lack of ample space is really, really poor. And the ventilation seems to be really lacking. I've seen animals when they've had, not just when they've had hoarding situations that they've responded to, which sadly they have on many occasions, but there've been animals out in the hallways there. And when you put animals in such close situations, there's additional stress, there's an increased opportunity for disease transmission, and it's not just good for staff either to be so crowded. So I'd like to see a much better animal control and animal shelter in place. And I wanted to also say that in response to going back to adequate ventilation, as a wildlife biologist and rehabilitator, emerging diseases across the country are a reality. And if an animal shelter that is city owned does not have adequate ventilation, that's a sort of a bare minimum in my book, emerging diseases can quickly become a problem. And it's not just with wildlife I'm talking about, because diseases can transmit between species. So I really think it's an issue that people need to look at in the future and for the future. And I'd like the city to pay some serious attention to that facility.
Okay, thank you. You're right. I'll back it up that Ron and his staff do a credible job. We're very fortunate to have them working with us. Anybody else hasn't spoken the first time? Okay, anybody else want to make some second comments, additional comments? Oh yeah, anything we do less of? What? Yeah, whatever.
Fewer deer.
Yeah.
I don't know if the city can do anything about the deer. But can we do something about the deer?
Well, some cities do some very radical things.
The deer.
Yeah.
Can we do something about the deer?
Well, again, some people do some cities allow harvesting of deer on their property. Now, we do allow periods where people can come in and get permits to actually harvest deer. If it's, we have some strict requirements. The property can let them in. It has to be a certain distance from the home and those type of things. But quite frankly, the poor deer, we are moving into their territory, right? And some will push them away, others they'll come into us. And I've got them in my backyard. It's incredible. You can walk down the paths and they don't even get out of the way. I mean, they feel very comfortable. So I can't promise you. I don't particularly support a more radical way of getting rid of those deer. I wouldn't want to have a mass killing them. They do that in some cities, and I don't think we want that. Yeah, birth control.
Yeah.
Well, that's I've talked to somebody else about that. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert at that.
I'd like to talk about two resiliency topics. When the derecho occurred, the city staff scrambled to stage some generators around town when the power grid went down. And I was walking into the library and saw that they had that new solar powered charging bench and thought, well, gosh, if we just sprinkle a couple of those around town, then that may take the load off of that for whenever the next weather event occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other resiliency topic would be to, there's been some fiber optic cuts in town that have affected, to my understanding, some city operations. So I'd like to see some investment in internet redundancy for city office networks.
Say what last part? What did you want to see?
Internet redundancy for
Redundancy.
city office networks.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else want to say something?
Yes, thank you. One of the things that I would point out too is that asset funding is wonderful, but it does not fund everything that needs to be funded. And so really focusing, channeling more money toward particularly serving those who are homeless or so experiencing homelessness or who are in danger of becoming homeless is a critical need in this town at this point. And I could go into more detail about what percentage of our budget at the Bridge Home is funded by asset if somebody's interested in that. But it's by no means a huge portion of our budget. So help is always appreciated with people's shelter as well.
Anybody else? Okay, so I appreciate your comments. Everybody had a chance to speak, who wanted to speak. You took the time to come here. Not very many people called in. But let me emphasize again, the final decisions are not made until January 14th. The plans will be unveiled starting, remember, January 17th, CIP first, public input on the 24th, and then those dates again in February. Remember those? Culminating that February 14th. So there's plenty of time as you see the plans being unveiled. If you couldn't make it tonight, or as Tim suggested, it's even better if you put it in writing and elaborate, and we'll make sure all that is passed on to the city council before they make final decisions. So there's plenty of time to get involved. Now, again, I can't guarantee everything you said will be in the budget. I hope you appreciate the council's getting a lot of input. There's going to be a lot over here. But they also get, believe it or not, people who say, I don't want you to raise my taxes, and I don't want you to raise my electric bills. Well, that pays for all these things. So they are in an enviable, I think, an enviable position of having to balance the budget, yet try to keep making the improvements people are talking about to make the quality of life better, cost more, and they do a great job at that. They do a great job of that. They try to keep the budget going like this. It's going to cost you a little bit more, but hopefully you get a lot more in services and quality, right? But they have to balance that. So I hope you can appreciate how difficult it is in their position to meet everyone's needs or demands or concerns and still come up with a budget that everybody's willing to pay for. And I think you'll find they'll continue to do that. And we appreciate your support. Very much appreciate you coming out tonight and getting input. Mayor, do you have a final comment?
Just two things. One is, how can they find or have access to the budget and CIP online?
Good point. You can go actually under the website, look under the finance department, and you will have the current operating budget there. This big document, you'll see performance document. It's a cool document because not only talk about numbers, it talks about our efficiency and effectiveness measures, the type of services we provide. Brian is going to do this for you to make it easy.
If you go to the city's website, cityofames.org, you can hover over the government tab and go to finance. And in this main section here, you'll find our current program budget, our current capital improvements plan, the budget in brief, which provides some more reports that may be interesting, not necessarily the entire budget document, but summaries of information. And that might be a little more digestible if you don't have a full weekend to commit to reading the entire budget. And then some special reports and other memos that go to the city council. And then you'll also find further down the last several years program budgets in brief, capital improvements plans, and then our annual comprehensive financial report, which includes our financial audit for the city.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, Mayor, I'm sorry.
One more thing, that is, council adopted a new policy about outside funding requests. You want to talk about that
Yeah,
too?
Brian can speak to that. That's
We have a deadline now.
Brian's prepared.
I'm trying to think of
All
a
right,
new
so
deadline.
council, so in years past,
Oh.
council would get
You're pregnant.
requests for outside funding and it'd come in January or it'd come in early February. And all of a sudden staff's trying to go ahead and we're trying to navigate all this and people it gets to be appointed. How are you going to balance these things? And people start to think, well, you're picking this one, but not picking this one. So council determined December 31st of this year is the cutoff. So that when anything comes in after that, the answer will be, thank you very much, but you have to ask for next year. Because that way council can look at everything holistically and try and avoid these last minute requests. And we had some requests coming in. One in particular came in at the very end. We were trying to make our final budget decisions. And that's really unfair. And we're trying to, and to say, well, how are we going to make this thing balance? And then tell them no or yes, essentially. So that's the new policy. It's been adopted. And so process, if you want to talk about that, Tom.
I just want to clarify, that's not what you just offered. If you as an individual citizen would like the council to spend more money on Bike Pass,
Right.
that's not part of the outside funding.
Right.
We're talking about if you belong to a group, an agency, some kind of organization that's seeking funding outside of asset. We
Or
want to filter through this separate process.
outside of the Commission on the Arts.
That's right.
Right.
Excuse me. We
Outside
have
of those
Commission
two
on the Arts
programs.
too, you're aware of, if you're performing arts.
Good
Okay, is
clarification.
that clear?
Good
So you
clarification.
might have given us input individually on projects as a citizen. You don't have to apply separately under it. It's if you're a separate organization seeking. Good point, Mayor. Anybody else want to ask a question? Make a comment? Okay. I appreciate you all coming tonight. All of those who are watching this broadcast, remember, it is only November 1st. There's plenty of time before we make those final decisions in February 14th for you to get input to the council. So please take advantage of that. Follow the process that goes through all those hearings and open meetings. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.